Hello everybody and welcome to the DR.VEGAN webinar. This is the third webinar in this series that we're doing this year, and today is all about excipients. Do we need them, and are they really necessary? What are the pros and the cons behind them? My name is Ella and I'm the practitioner lead at DR.VEGAN, and also today with us we have our guest Shona Wilkinson, who's a registered nutritionist. Now, before I start, I wanted to quickly mention our practitioners' webinars are intended only for professionals, and this includes trainee nutritionists, nutritional therapy practitioners, dietitians, naturopaths and pharmacists. They are not intended for members of the public. Okay, just 1 second. Hopefully you can all see my screen. Having a few technical errors here. Shona, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for joining everyone, especially because it's such a lovely evening. I'm sure you'd rather be outside with a gin and tonic or something. But yeah, my name's Shona Wilkinson. As Ella said, I'm a registered nutritionist and a nutritional therapist. I've been in the industry for many years. I'm very old now. So I kind of started in the business probably about 20 years ago. And I worked for, well, originally when I qualified, I actually went into clinic and started my own clinic. And after about 4 years qualifying, I realized that I didn't enjoy clinic work. So I really panicked about that. And luckily found my way into the supplement industry. So that's where my real passion is. That's what I'm obsessed with, everything to do with supplements, all the way through from the start of it all the way through to the marketing and the launch of the product. So although I am a nutritionist, I don't really do anything to do with food, which is a bit bizarre. It's all purely supplements. So yeah, thank you for inviting me on this webinar.
No worries. Thank you so much for that introduction, Shona. I'll just give myself a very brief introduction. So my name's Ella. I'm the practitioner lead here at DR.VEGAN, and I graduated in 2013 and have since been in clinic and in education. So that's lecturing and clinical supervising roles, and working with food supplement companies. And also working, a lot of my career has been working with practitioners as well and helping them to progress themselves. So I'm really thrilled to be with you here today. Today we're going to talk about a wide range of topics regarding food supplement excipients. So that will include their role, their definition, their common excipients and their function, the research and safety and tolerability. And we're also going to explore if we actually need them, and can we get away without them? And if we can get away without them, what can we use in their place? Okay. Shona, do you want to give us a brief overview of stabilizers and fillers and dilutants?
Yes, so as mentioned, I work in the world of supplements, so I'm so lucky to be able to have clients who want to bring a product to market. So I work with them with the formulation, you know, what nutrients we want in there and the dosages, etc. And I go all the way through working with the manufacturer until the finished product. So excipients becomes part of this. The reason I just want to tell you all about this is that when I did my nutrition degree, it was very much focused towards going into clinic. And I'm really passionate about telling practitioners and students that there's a whole other world of employment out there, either with supplement companies or manufacturers. So everything doesn't have to lead into the clinic. And the job satisfaction is incredible. Seeing an Excel spreadsheet turn into a product that's for sale, that practitioners are recommending, and that you've got great feedback that's making people feel better and healthier. So don't think everything's about clinic. There is a whole lovely world of supplements out there that's really exciting. So what what are excipients actually? So there is a proper definition for this. Excipients are all non-active ingredients that are included in a dietary supplement and pharmaceutical products as well. And they aid with the formulation, protect the active compounds, to ensure accurate dosaging, improve stability, apparently enhance absorption, but basically to facilitate the manufacturing process. So really they're everything that's added to a supplement, but not for therapeutic reasons. So it's not an ingredient that's there for the health of the consumer, but more for the manufacturing process. Having said that, if you're clever, you can formulate a supplement in the way to kind of remove the need for these excipients that we'd rather not have and replace them with ones that we are happy with having in there and have a therapeutic benefit. So we will discuss this later on, actually, but that's the goal, basically. Now, I really believe that as a practitioner, you owe a duty of care to your clients or your patients to only recommend a product that's the best quality supplement. And that means not just what's in the product, but what isn't in the product as well. So we're looking for nutrients and dosages, but we also need to look a little bit further into that and look at the excipients, because I don't think you can expect a client to know all about that information. Why should they? That's what they're paying us for, really. So we really have a duty of care to recommend a really good quality supplement to them. So although I said that supplements are very exciting, this section is a little bit dry, but sometimes, you just have to learn things, don't you, in life? But I'll try and make it as exciting as fun as possible. So we're just going to go through the main excipients. Sorry, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah. We're just going to go through the main excipients. There are some other ones, but these are the ones that you will mainly come across. I was working on a formula for a chewing gum, actually, nutrients in a chewing gum, and I came across some excipients that I'd never come across before, but that's because it was a chewing gum, it was quite an unusual delivery format. But these are the main ones that you would get to know about when you look into supplement manufacture a little bit more. So is everyone okay if I just carry on going? Is there any questions at the moment? Shall I launch into this?
No, I think you're fine, Shona. I think we'll answer questions at the end. So just go ahead and...
Right, perfect. So first of all, stabilizers. So some of these are pretty much what they sound like, actually. So stabilizers in supplements help preserve the physical and the chemical stability of the active ingredients, the nutrients in there. So they're designed to prevent them from degradation, which can be caused by moisture, heat, or oxidation. And they tend to be a bit more important in formulas that contain really sensitive nutrients. And the two main ones are omega-3 fatty acids and probiotics, because they're very delicate ingredients. And an example of that was I came across in America, actually, where I was looking at a supplement shop, as you do, a bit sad like that. But I was looking in the shop window and they had a huge bottle, probably about that big, obviously being bigger in America. And it was a huge bottle. It was clear, so it was see-through, and it was plastic, and it contained fish oils. Now, it was in the shop window. It was about 32, 33 degrees. It was in direct sunlight. And I know that the oils in there are just going to oxidize. They're going to go rancid. So you want something to help prevent that. Although I'm not sure anything's going to prevent it in that case. Actually, I would just not buy the product. But common stabilizers you might see on labels: microcrystalline cellulose, xanthan gum, citric acid. But when we're talking about formulating a product, some brands use something like vitamin E as a stabilizer in an omega-3 product. So this will show how much care and effort they put into the formulation. So using vitamin E is a really good example of using a great ingredient that's got health benefits, but it also happens to be an excipient. It's an antioxidant. So I think when you look at that, you look at your omega products, either algae or fish oils, what are they using as a stabilizer? Vitamin E, they've really thought about the client, the consumer, and they've put something in there that's got health benefits as well. The cons of some of these stabilizers, with excipients, the cons are usually gastrointestinal related, usually in quite sensitive individuals, and the gums that we mentioned can cause bloating. So if you have a sensitive client, you might really need to watch out for the excipients and look through the product and see what excipients are in it before you recommend that product. The next one is fillers and diluents. Now, these terms are actually used interchangeably in the context of supplements and pharmaceutical medication, actually, but there are kind of subtle distinctions. So fillers, as they say, actually, they add bulk to formulations to fill the tablet or the capsule size, particularly when the active ingredient is in very small amounts. And diluents, they have the same purpose, but they kind of expand the nutrient to fill the capsule size. So an example of this could be if I just show you this. So this is a capsule. This is a size 00. So this holds about, does depend, but about 735 milligrams of powder. And you can get a slightly smaller one, which is this one, a size 0, that holds 500 milligrams. So if you're buying or recommending a supplement that is a vitamin K2, for example, that's in micrograms. So 100% of the NRV of vitamin K2 is 75 micrograms. So that's 0.01% of the capsule is going to be made up of vitamin K2. So you want to add something to fill the capsule. Otherwise, your client is going to be looking at this, which is empty. You might just about see a little trace of powder in there, but the rest of the capsule will be empty, which isn't very appealing or reassuring for your client. So you want to fill that capsule somehow. Common fillers are microcrystalline cellulose again, dicalcium phosphate, magnesium stearate, silicon dioxide you might see as well. But going back to what we were saying earlier, let's try and fill the capsule with something that's got health benefits instead, and it can add as a filler, but it gives health benefits. So you could include something like inulin, which is a probiotic and a prebiotic and fiber. So that can give health benefits to your client. Or something like brown rice flour, which, you know, we have brown rice in our diet. So kind of natural ways of filling up the capsule rather than, you know, really horrible ingredients. So moving on a little bit to the next one is anti-caking agents. So anti-caking agents are added to supplements to help prevent the powdered ingredients from kind of clumping together. So some nutrients such as choline, for example, choline we know is quite I'm trying to avoid using the word moist. We don't like that word. It's quite damp or quite wet. So we really don't want to see just a lump of powder at the bottom of the capsule, because again, that's going to put clients off. So something will be added to make it fill the whole capsule. Examples: silicon dioxide again, magnesium carbonate, calcium silicetate. But then again, you know, maybe use inulin, a good example of an anti-caking agent. So the next one, flavoring and coloring agents. Now, flavoring and coloring agents are used in supplements to make them taste nice, basically, and for the visual appeal. So this is really designed to help with the branding of the product, but help with the user experience and help ensure client compliance. So powders, for example, when I formulate a powder, it could be a mixture of vitamins, minerals, and botanicals, and we make up a sample, and you can guarantee that it actually is going to taste pretty grim. It's not going to taste nice. And it also tends to look a little bit like pond water. It doesn't look particularly appealing. Now, I don't care about that. I don't mind what the taste is. I don't mind what it looks like. But most consumers do worry about that. So again, you know, to think of a natural approach. For colouring, we could add beetroot for a nice pink colour. You can add activated charcoal if you want it black. You can add chlorella to make it a nice green colour. So there's no reason for these nasty E numbers and nasty artificial colourings. We just don't need them. Gummies in particular have quite a lot of flavourings and colourings added. I've also worked on chewing gums, sprays, drinks, shots, liquids, all that kind of delivery formats tend to have more excipients than capsules. So check the ingredients of these different delivery formats, and some are better than others. And I think, Ella, you had something you wanted to say about flavorings here.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have to be really, really, really careful when it comes to flavorings, because there's a lot of I would say rules and regulations, which means suppliers and manufacturers of flavors can get away with a lot. And actually, I'm going to tell you something that will probably shock most of you. So manufacturers are actually under no obligation to disclose the ingredients in their flavors. They only need to disclose the flavor what's in the flavor if it contains an allergen. And so this is in no way helpful to people that do have allergies that aren't on the standard 14 list. And if a product looks like it should be vegan or vegetarian, but it doesn't state so on the packet, yet there's a flavoring agent listed, actually that probably that flavor contains an animal product. Now here's where it gets a little bit deeper, especially in products that come from the USA. So where a product states natural flavor, it only needs to be 5% natural, and the flavoring part needs to be natural. Whereas the other 95% can be synthetic, and they may include ingredients like polypropylene glycol, butylated hydroxyanisole, butylated hydroxytoluene, and triacetin, which is actually a plasticizer. But these don't need to be listed. And here's another thing as well. Supposing something has a raspberry flavour to it, and the ingredient states natural raspberry flavour or natural flavouring, the flavouring agent itself doesn't need to be from raspberry. So, for example, a commonly used natural flavour is called castonium, which is a secretion from the anal glands of beavers, and that's quite often used in vanilla or raspberry or strawberry flavourings in food. So manufacturers of flavours don't actually need to disclose this, only that it contains an animal product, which in most cases won't make it onto the label. Now, where a product states natural raspberry flavour, that means that the flavouring agent has to come from raspberries. So that's a bit more simplified. But it still can have some synthetic ingredients in there. Now, the laws are a bit stricter in the UK, which is great, but the manufacturers are still under no obligation to disclose their ingredients unless they contain one of the 14 allergens. So also here in the UK, if the label says a natural flavour, then the whole flavour must be natural, but we still won't know what those ingredients are, just that they're natural. But there's, as you know, there's lots of things in nature that can also be harmful. So when I'm looking at a label, what I want to really see is something like a raspberry concentrate to flavour, or an orange concentrate. And this really means what it says is that it's just that concentrated source. Now, I don't want to name any brands here. I'm not going to do that, but there are some big brands out there. Quite a lot of them are recommended by a lot of practitioners that I know, and they seem clean and they're marketed very well. But if you look at the ingredients, you're going to see natural flavor or natural vanilla flavor. And I can tell you that probably some of those ingredients that you're consuming when you're consuming that product, you wouldn't want. If you knew that they were in there, you wouldn't take that product. So just make sure, like as practitioners, you do your due diligence and make sure that the supplements you are giving to your customers and your clients are really, really clean, because we don't want to do them a disservice by giving them something that could potentially be harmful to them.
Yeah, thanks for that. I do remember a few years ago when raspberry ketones were really popular for weight loss, weren't they? And then it came out that the raspberry flavour came from, what was it, beaver anal glands or something. And I mean, I was shocked by that, obviously, but I also thought, gosh, who found that out? How did they find that out? Bizarre. Some things it's best not to know. So thank you for that. So moving on to disintegrants. So disintegrants are excipients used mainly in tablets for efficient disintegration in the gut, helping break down the tablet. They're mainly used in tablets because if you think of the manufacturing process of a tablet, the ingredients are kind of squashed together. It's not a very technical term, is it? But they're kind of clamped together, crushed together, and then they have a coating on them to make them into a tablet. So sometimes they do need a little bit of help being broken down in the gut. Common disintegrants, I'm just going to read this because I can't remember them and I might not be able to say them either, but crosspovidone, cross-carmelose sodium and sodium starch glycolate are common disintegrants. So these are mainly found in tablets, and I think in general tablets tend to have more excipients than capsules in them, just because of the actual format, you know, the crushing together of the nutrients, the binding of them, and then the outer coating. So I personally try to avoid tablets as much as possible. And as part of my job, I haven't actually been asked to formulate a tablet for, gosh, probably about 8 to 10 years. So I think they are seen as a little bit old-fashioned, maybe. And maybe this is the reason why, because of the excipients there. So lubricants in the supplement world are excipients that are used in the manufacturing process to reduce the friction between the powders and the machinery surface when they're making the tablet or filling the capsules. So basically they help prevent the ingredients sticking to the equipment, and this helps the manufacturer make capsules quicker. They can produce them a lot quicker. Time is money and all that. So common examples include magnesium stearate, stearic acid, and sodium stearyl fumarate. Now, magnesium stearate, Ella's going to talk about it a little bit more later, but magnesium stearate is a little bit, well, it is a little bit controversial excipient. There's studies to show that it's not good, and there's studies to show that it's absolutely fine. But I just think I would prefer not to have it in there, especially as it's there just for the manufacturing process to be quicker. Some manufacturers will automatically put it in, but if you ask them not to, they will change it. And some of them need to have the correct equipment to avoid using it. So if you're ever entering into the world of getting your own supplements made, choose your manufacturer wisely, because some can avoid these excipients and some can't. Magnesium stearate has no direct health benefits. It is thought in high dosages to have a mild laxative effect, and some studies show it reduces the absorption of other ingredients, and some studies show liver and kidney damage, but this is in a high dose. So Ella will talk a little bit about this later, but you're not going to get high dosages in a supplement. You're really not. But if you have a really highly sensitive client and they're taking, you know, quite a few supplements, it could potentially be a problem for them. So I think if you don't need it, don't have it. And lastly, we have binders. So binders are excipients used in supplement formulations to ensure the binding together all the powder ingredients. So particularly again in tablet formulation, you need to bind all those nutrients together. So usually tablets, not capsules. Examples, again, microcrystalline cellulose, guar gum. Both of these ingredients are, they're natural, but they're from plants, but they have no nutritional value at all, and they are highly processed. So we just wanted to show you some examples of natural and synthetic excipients. Yeah, here we go. So these are some natural excipients. I won't go through them all because there's a lot there. But just to pick out a few, you know, although they are natural, would you want them in your supplement? Shellac, for example, not your nail shellac, from insect secretions. Would you really want that in your product? As I say, it's natural, but I wouldn't want it in there. The gums here, so we've got acacia gum, guar gum, xanthan gum. Again, these are all natural, but in sensitive individuals, they can cause bloating. So we just have to be a little bit careful if you've got a very sensitive client. And what else? Maltodextrin, again, it's natural, but I wouldn't want to recommend a product to my client that has maltodextrin in it. We're trying to give them health benefits, and that's not providing anything. And lastly, maybe stevia. So Ella's going to talk about stevia a little bit more later, but stevia has been very popular lately in powdered products, and it's being used as a sweetener because it is so incredibly sweet. But although it is natural, it does taste very synthetic, and you can get a real kind of bitter aftertaste with it. So there is a little bit of a backlash against stevia at the moment. There are concerns about it being a bit dirty in the process. You know, it's heavily processed, and there are concerns about it affecting the microbiome, which Ella's going to touch on later. And all of these things are very highly processed. So even better would be use monk fruit as a sweetener, use brown rice flour in there, use inulin, something that's got kind of natural health benefits as well. So moving on to the synthetic excipients. I mean, you know, seriously, would you ever give your client something that's got aspartame in it? You really wouldn't want to do that. And there's no reason for it to be in there. If you see that in a supplement, it's very lazy formulating. It's maybe formulated by someone who just wanted to bring something to market that's cheap and cheerful and not particularly concerned about the health benefits of the product. And there are people like that out there. Sucralose and saccharin, again, you know, you can use other things to add to sweetness that aren't sucralose and saccharin. So monk fruit is a good example. We mentioned inulin again. So inulin, prebiotic fiber, but it also tastes like candy floss. It's really sweet. So it's a good way of adding sweetness to a product along with the health benefits. We've also got titanium dioxide on here. So Ella's going to discuss this later, actually, but it does raise a really important point that you have to constantly keep in touch with the legislation. This is probably, I would say, the hardest part of my job is keeping abreast of the legislation, because it can change almost daily and it can change overnight. And it gives me a headache, actually, to be honest, but you really have to keep up to date with that. And the reason why I'm mentioning that, well, in fact, Ella will discuss it later, but titanium dioxide is a good example of this. You will still see it in supplements because they're being sold through. And including some practitioner brands will have titanium dioxide in them. So don't always think that just because it's a practitioner brand, it's a good quality product, because it may not be. And then also on this slide, we've got talc. Now, I would like to think that there isn't talc in any supplement anymore nowadays, and I didn't think it existed. However, I came across this product when I was doing my supermarket shopping, looking at the supplements, as I do. Now, I've blocked out the name of the supermarket, but it's a supermarket brand. This is a multivitamin and mineral. It's tablets. It's 3 months supply, and it was £2.75 or something like that for 3 months supply. So alarm bells ringing a little bit there. But it's got lots of ingredients here. It's got bulking agents, glazing agents, anti-caking agents, artificial colours, flavourings, blah, blah, blah. But it's also got talc in it, which is such a shame, and it's so unnecessary. And I do appreciate that it's difficult, especially, you know, financially people are struggling at the moment. And it's hard to recommend more expensive supplements to a client that's already potentially struggling and maybe struggling to pay, you know, to see you to begin with. But sometimes I think, you know, is that going to give any health benefits? I don't know. But so talc is still around. So just on to the next slide, which is talking about the safety of these excipients. So all excipients in supplements, I shouldn't say all, but most excipients in supplements are considered safe, and they're classified as GRAS, G-R-A-S, by the regulatory authorities. GRAS, GRAS stands for generally recognized as safe. Generally recognized as safe. So Ella will go into a bit more detail about the regulations later, but I just want to say here that some people say that supplements aren't regulated, and it drives me mad because they really are. So we were talking about, you know, what ingredients you can have in there, what dosages you can have in there, what you can and can't say about the ingredients. There's real heavy legislation around it. The problem is that it isn't policed particularly well, so you can get lots of strange supplements out there making highly illegal claims. So the lesson is, as with most things, you know, be careful where you buy supplements from. And then don't judge the supplement if it's for sale on Amazon. I'm guilty of doing this to begin with. I used to think it wasn't a great product because it was for sale on Amazon, but Amazon, bizarrely enough, is actually quite strict about their supplements, the ingredients and the health claims on there. So the odd thing gets through, but on the whole, you know, it doesn't mean anything bad about that brand, that it's on Amazon. They're actually quite strict. And as far as how excipients may affect sensitive individuals, as mentioned, it's usually gut, gastrointestinal side effects that happen, bloating, gas, diarrhea, particularly when consuming large amounts, or if your client's sensitive to certain fibers or gums, xanthan gum, for example. So if a client complains of side effects from a supplement, it's very rarely the nutrients, and it's more likely to be the excipients, if anything. It's probably something totally different and not supplement at all, actually, to be honest. But if they are complaining about side effects, it's best to look at the excipients first rather than the nutrients. Allergic reactions are uncommon, but they are possible. You may have a stabilizer that's derived from soy or other allergens, something like that. But legally, all allergens need to be declared on the product, on the label, and they'll be in bold. So you need to check this for your clients. So I think, Ella, you're going to talk about some research around excipients now.
Yes, thank you for that, Shona. That was a very good introduction into excipients. Thank you very much. And yeah, there's some really, really interesting research on excipients that I just want to take people through, because I don't think people realise actually that they're not all safe really. Although they're maybe part of the generally recognised as safe, or part of that, or they're listed on that list. But there is some research that makes us think maybe they're not all as good as they claim to be. Okay, so the first research paper here is looking at artificial food dyes, which sometimes is in food supplements, especially when you've got maybe a powder or a liquid product, or they just want to make the capsule a nice colour, or even gummies. A lot of children's supplements may have artificial food dyes in there. And a review published in the Archives of Disease in Childhood concluded that artificial colorants, benzoate preservatives, non-calorific sweeteners, emulsifiers, and their degradation derivatives have adverse effects by increasing the risks of mental health disorders, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, and potential carcinogenic effects. A systemic review has established that zero-azo dye, food colorants, and sodium benzoate preservatives cause disturbed behavior in children. Artificial food colorants and benzoates in animal models have shown to be neurotoxic, and they're neurotoxic through the gut microbial generation of toxic metabolites. So it's not necessarily the products, the excipients themselves, it's how they're metabolized within the gut and what they're broken down to in the body and how that affects health. And observational studies show associations between high emulsifier intake and cardiovascular disease. Animal models and in vitro studies have highlighted neurotoxic, cytotoxic, and genotoxic, as well as carcinogenic effects. High intakes of non-calorific sweeteners have been linked to cardiovascular disease and depression in adults, and is linked to childhood obesity. Little research has been focused on children and on its risk-benefit analysis. So actually, I think all of these should be banned because we don't have the research on them. And the little research that we do have shows them to be potentially harmful. And if we're giving the supplements to our children, think how that's going to affect their growth and their development. And the key findings from this paper, actually really interestingly, pointed out that these additives have no nutritional value actually, and they're only in there to enhance the appearance or the taste or the shelf life. So they're in there mostly for the manufacturers and not for their nutritional value. And the artificial colorants and benzoate preservatives are linked to behavioral issues. So any child with behavior issues, hyperactivity, and also they've been linked to neurotoxicity in animal studies. Emulsifiers are also been linked to cardiovascular disease, and lab studies suggest neurotoxic, genotoxic, and carcinogenic effect of emulsifiers. So we need to get these out of our supplements. And again, non-calorific sweeteners are associated with cardiovascular disease and depression in adults and childhood obesity. So look at the rates of childhood obesity, look at the rates of depression and cardiovascular disease. It's really not helping the situation when people are taking these supplements thinking they're healthy when actually they could be contributing to the problem. Okay, so let's have a look at stevia. This is a bit of a controversial one, isn't it, Shona? Because it's in so many supplements, so many, like, superfoods that you mix with water or milk, or you put in your smoothie. You'll look, it's got stevia. In fact, I've even seen stevia sold separately in health food shops for baking. And so many recipes online, that say, oh, stop the sugar, but have stevia instead. Okay, so a study published in the Saudi Arabian Pharmaceutical Journal concludes that sucralose and stevia have negative health consequences. So mice were administered sweeteners for 5 hours a day. Both of the sweeteners significantly reduced hemoglobin levels, hemocrit percentage, red blood cell and white blood cell counts. And after 18 weeks, significant elevations in liver and kidney function enzymes were observed in both male and female mice administered both sweeteners. And histopathological examinations in sucrose and stevia administered groups confirmed severe damage in liver and kidney sections. While sucrose administration did elevate the levels of ALT and AST, and also the cholesterol levels in mice. So you wouldn't believe that stevia could potentially elevate cholesterol. A vigorous evaluation in the level of differences between immunoglobulins between the mice that were fed the sweeteners and the ones that weren't, found that the IgG, IgA, and IgE and pro-inflammatory cytokines were elevated, and that was associated with a significant inflammatory response. And the mice that were fed the sugar only, they had higher levels of interleukin 10, but they didn't have that inflammatory response that was seen on the stevia and the sucralose group. So it turns out that actually it's probably better for you just to eat table sugar rather than sweeteners, because although you have some negative responses going on there, you don't have as many that you do get from the artificial sweeteners. And the key findings here, so both sweeteners lowered important blood markers like hemoglobin, red and white blood cell counts. And after 16 weeks, mice giving sucralose or stevia had signs of liver and kidney damage, which was seen in the blood tests and under a microscope. And the immune system showed an inflammatory response to both of those sweeteners. And again, the mice given just regular sugar had elevated enzymes, but didn't show the same level of inflammation and organ damage that is seen in sucralose and stevia. So be really, really, really careful about recommending stevia to your clients. It's not what it's made out to be. And another study here on fertility. This is really interesting. So male fertility, a 1999 study observed that chronic administration of stevia extract to prepubertal male rats led to reductions in weight of reproductive organs and sperm concentration. And female fertility, research has shown, research from 1968 reported that female rats consuming a water-based stevia extract experienced reduced fertility, an effect that persisted for 50 to 60 days after stopping. And although most of this research is in its infancy, yes, I do agree with that, and some of it is only being conducted on animals, we do need to take that into consideration. The fact that these additives might be harmful to humans, and actually if there's a choice of supplements that do not contain these additives or contain very minimal additives that occur naturally in the human diet, like we should be recommending those to our clients other than these other ones that potentially are harmful, as we've seen in animal models. And, although I'm not aware of any human trials on stevia and fertility, I personally don't think it's worth the risk when it's been shown to be detrimental to animal models. Okay, cancer. This is a big one, so I just had to kind of select a few bits of research that would go here rather than talking about it for hours and hours. Okay, so chitosan promotes cancer progression. So chitosan is quite often used as a coating agent on tablets. Cancer stem cells are a small group of cancer cells that play a key role in starting cancer and allowing cancer to come back once somebody's had it previously, and also spreading the cancer to other parts of the body. And the environment around the tumour and the cancer helps the cancer stem cells to stay alive and grow. So in this study, scientists grew colon and liver cancer cells on material called chitosan to see how it affects cancer growth. They found that chitosan made cancer cells more mobile, more resistant to drugs, and better at renewing themselves. So features linked to cancer stem cells, basically all of those. It also increased specific cancer stem cell regulated genes, and additionally discovered that chitosan activated different signaling pathways in colon and liver cells, helping cancer stem cells to thrive. So maybe somebody's coming to you because they want to prevent cancer. Maybe it's in their family, or they've had cancer, or maybe they want help recovering from cancer, and then you recommend a supplement that's got chitosan in it. You could be doing them much more harm than good. So it's really, really important to give them clean supplements, as clean as possible. Okay, aspartame. So again, as Shona mentioned earlier, I hope that nobody's recommending supplements with aspartame, but I've seen a few out there. I've seen them in effervescents and liquids, so just be really careful. So because of the rising obesity and metabolic diseases like type 2 diabetes, synthetic sweeteners have actually become popular as a sugar substitute. However, there are concerns about whether aspartame can cause harm and increase oxidative stress in the body, and how actually fats are processed in the body. So in a study with human nerve cells, researchers tested aspartame and its breakdown products, which is aspartic acid and phenylalanine and methanol. They found that these substances raise oxidative stress in cells, which cause damage to the mitochondria. The damage was linked to changes in important molecules in the cell, as well as increase in the markers for oxidative stress. So additionally, the study showed that aspartame or its breakdown products increase the levels of triglycerides, which build up in the cell, forming small droplets inside the nerve cell. Because of these effects on fat metabolism and cell damage, the study suggests that we should rethink using aspartame as a sugar substitute, especially when it comes to its impact on like the brain and the nerve cells. Although further research is needed to look at how aspartame affects the brain in living organisms, it's really initial research that again is ringing alarm bells for me. So just be really, really careful. Okay, polysorbate 80. This is used in a lot of liquids, and actually I've seen it in a few foods in the supermarket, so that's another one to watch out for. But definitely in liquid supplements, and I've seen it in a lot of liquid supplements for children as well, especially under the age of 3. Okay, so polysorbate 80 is actually a common emulsifier in food, and it has been shown to be harmful to intestinal permeability and increase intestinal permeability in mice. So the male mice were divided into 2 groups. They had a control group and a polysorbate 80 group. And the polysorbate 80 was added to their drinking water 4 times per day. And the researchers measured certain markers in the blood and muscle, including a test to check for intestinal permeability. Polysorbate 80 group had higher levels of certain substances, including a marker for leaky gut and lipopolysaccharide compared to the other group. The polysorbate 80 group also had more inflammation in the muscles and a higher tumor necrosis factor alpha. Although polysorbate 80 fed mice had high levels of metabolic marker, the insulin signaling in muscle didn't change up. So that's quite interesting. And after exercise, the polysorbate 80 group showed lower muscle pH, less mitochondrial activity, and lower glycogen content compared to the control group. And additionally, there was a negative relationship between the gut permeability and muscle glycogen levels in exercised mice. So overall, this study suggests that the daily intake of polysorbate 80 can impair the gut's ability to function properly, leading to glucose intolerance and mitochondrial function in muscle. So very interesting, and not something that I'd initially think of when I look at polysorbate 80. Okay, potassium sorbate. So there was a study that looked at whether potassium sorbate can damage DNA in human blood cells. Researchers tested potassium sorbate on cultured and isolated human blood cells and lymphocytes, and they were able to measure the DNA and looked for DNA damage. So they treated the cells with different concentrations of polysorbate 80. And what the results showed was that potassium sorbate increased chromosomal damage and DNA exchanges at higher concentrations, and it also caused DNA strands to break just after 1 hour of treatment at all concentrations. So overall, this study concludes that potassium sorbate is genotoxic, meaning that it causes DNA damage in human blood cells and in the lab. So again, you know, it's not great that we're seeing this in children's supplements. Again, also lots of the time in liquid, and also consider it when we're giving it to pregnant women as well. You know, is it got potential to harm the growing fetus? Okay, magnesium stearate. Okay, this is quite an interesting one as well. So the study investigated how stearic acid affects immune responses. So when B and T cells were exposed to stearic acid, the fatty acid was incorporated differently into the membranes. So in T cells, stearic acid led to an increase in the type of phosphatidylcholine containing 2 stearic acid molecules, which replaced normal phosphatidylcholine. In contrast, B cells mostly incorporated oleic acid into their membranes instead. Now, in T cells, the buildup of stearic acid containing phosphatidylcholine causes cell membranes to break down quickly, within 8 hours actually, which led to a loss of cell function. This cell breakdown depended on both the amount of stearic acid and the time of exposure. Now, B cells, on the other hand, were able to avoid this problem because they could convert the stearic acid into a less rigid form of phosphatidylcholine. The study suggests that T cells lack the enzyme needed to convert stearic acid, which leads to a buildup of the rigid type of phosphatidylcholine in the membranes, causing the cell membranes to become too stiff and lose their function. So again, that's not great for people that have reduced immune function or autoimmunity or other issues regarding T cell function. Okay, titanium dioxide. Okay, this one is a little bit juicy. Okay, it's been the subject of multiple evaluations, and until recently, it's been in supplements. It was in so many supplements. And in 2021, it was banned by EFSA because they concluded that it was genotoxic and it should no longer be allowed in food supplements. So it was actually banned in the EU, and it's still found in some supplements that come from the EU, because when they ban an excipient, generally you're allowed to use up your stock. You're just not allowed to produce anymore with that excipient in. And you've got to remember that some stock has got a long shelf life, so you might still find it. And with regards to the UK has asked for more information, and they're still on the fence as to whether it's allowed or not. So it's still being sold here in the UK, so just be really, really careful with titanium dioxide. And if something has been banned in some countries for toxicity, I certainly wouldn't want to be taking that just because my country says that it's okay. So just be really careful. Okay, so regulations on excipients. I'll try not to make this dull. It can be a little bit dry, so I'll try and make it a bit more interesting and just give you a brief outline. Okay, so the use of excipients in medicines and supplements are regulated. So the main bodies involved are the MHRA and the EFSA, so the European Food Standards Agency. Now, MHRA is relevant because it regulates medicines and excipients. So some herbal homeopathic products that you might recommend to your clients may be regulated by the MHRA. So they do enforce people that are breaching regulations, but some companies are allowed to get away with things for a lot longer than they should be, just because nobody has reported them. And again, the EFSA, the European Food Standards Agency, that regulates food supplements across Europe and in the UK. And they are quite strict, so you're required to disclose exactly what's in your product in descending order. So if you've got excipient at the beginning of the ingredient list, there's a very large amount of that excipient in there, potentially maybe a filler or a binder. If you've got it at the end of the list, it potentially could be a very small quantity. So you are required to give it in quantitative order. So just check everything, check the labels, check the order that it's in. And so most supplements in the UK will come under the European Food Standards Agency regulation. Okay, so we mentioned titanium dioxide on the last slide. So yeah, it's really just a case of kind of, if you want to go and have a look at the regulations, feel free to do so. But just be very mindful. Okay, Shona, are excipients needed?
Gosh, okay. So are excipients needed? Can we get by without them? What can we use instead? I think we've kind of talked about this as we've gone through it, actually. Sometimes excipients are needed potentially for client compliance. As we mentioned, if you're asking a client to take a powder, and it is so disgusting, then they may not comply with that. They may take it once or twice. So sometimes you need to add something to it to make it vaguely palatable. But as we discussed earlier, it is a bit of a balancing act. We want to make it palatable for the client, but we want to do it in a natural way. So the goal is to formulate a product with ingredients that are, they provide two functions, so they're dual functions. So they're there for the health benefits, they're providing health benefits to your client, but they also happen to act as an excipient. And we discussed a few benefits there. So certainly when, a few examples there. So certainly when I'm formulating, that is my goal. And I will work very closely with the manufacturer to ensure that we've only got excipients in there that we want. And that is sometimes quite hard to do. I think, you know, financially it can sometimes cost more. It may take longer to do. So it does show that a brand is really caring for their client, because it takes longer for them to do and it can be more expensive, but it shows a real thought process that brand has gone through compared to some others. So when you're comparing brands, the nutrients may be exactly the same, but it could be the excipients that's making the difference there. I think, Ella, you were just going to talk about DR.VEGAN as an example.
Yeah, absolutely. So DR.VEGAN, we really actually prioritise the health and safety of our customers, and we never use unnecessary additives or excipients. So one of the things that we look at when we're formulating supplements is, okay, do we have what's necessary and do we not have what's not necessary? That's really, really important to us. And our focus is actually to promote health and well-being. And that means for us not putting in excipients that potentially could be harmful, or there's not enough safety data in there. And in the case of an additive, it's absolutely 100% necessary, which sometimes they are. We would use something that's normally in the human diet, like brown rice flour, for example, or vegetable fiber for the capsule shell. So something that has been shown to be consumed by humans for centuries without any adverse effects. So we're really, really careful about what goes into our supplements. Okay, practitioner considerations, Shona.
Yeah, so key ingredients to watch for and how to assess supplement labels. I think we've gone through the key excipients, but I just wanted to show an example here. This is the DR.VEGAN Women's Pro Multi. So when I first started out in supplements, I don't know if you can see this very well, but there's two things to look at: the nutritional information chart. So that's a list of all the nutrients that are in the product, the dosage of them, and the percentage NRV. So when I first started recommending products, that's what I used to look at. And I never really looked at the ingredients list. But now I think as a practitioner, we need to look at this. Obviously, that's very important, what nutrients are in the product, but we need to go that one step further and look at the ingredients list. So the ingredients list will show, firstly, what form of the nutrient is. So if it's vitamin B12 on here, you look on the ingredients list to see what form of B12 that is. But it will also show all the excipients and what they are. Legally has to say what that excipient is there for. So this isn't a great example, actually, because obviously there isn't anything. We just got the capsule shell and that's it. But going back to this product here, we've got bulking agents, glazing agents, anti-caking agents, colours and flavourings. So it will legally say what that excipient is there for. So I think as a practitioner, we need to do this for our client. We need to look at the nutrients, of course, but then we also go across and look at the ingredients there. I firmly believe that your clients are relying on you to give them the best advice on what supplement to take. So you need to be 100% confident. And as we mentioned earlier, don't just, to be careful what I say here, but don't just think because it's a practitioner brand, it's going to be a good supplement, because I've actually been quite shocked looking at brands that I thought were really good, and they do have good nutrients, but they also have a lot of excipients, and I really feel that they need to revisit their formulas and change that, because there's just no reason for it nowadays. So it may be a practitioner brand, but look at the ingredients, check what excipients are in there, and challenge the brand, ring them up and say, why have you got this in there? Can't you use such and such instead? Because brands need to up their game a little bit to quite rightly fulfill the demands that clients are making nowadays.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that, Shona. So on the next slide, we just have the research here. So if you are watching this on demand, please feel free to pause this and look at those links. If you do want me to email them to you, just drop me an email or share my email address with you in a minute, and I can send you those researcher links and you can take a look for yourself. Okay, so now we're going to have a Q&A session. I've actually got some really, really good questions here for us to look through. So the first question, so can you recommend a training course for practitioners wanting to go into the supplement development industry or develop a product? Okay, actually, interestingly, so Shona has actually written a really good book on industry. Shona, do you want to give a little bit of info on that?
Yes, so yes, I co-authored a book, and the reason this came about was because there was just no one place for me to go to for all this information. You know, I'd look on this website, all the different legislation, and I just remember thinking, God, I wish there was a book that just had everything in it, and there wasn't. Hunted high and low for this. So here we go. So this is how this book came around. It's back to front for you, but supplement formulae. So I co-authored this. So this has got everything you need to know about excipients, everything about supplements all the way from start to finish. It's different from other supplement books in that it's not about what nutrients are good for what health condition, because I think practitioners learn that as part of their course anyway. But it just opens up the whole world of supplements that I was oblivious about. And even on my course, my nutrition course, I learned a little bit about supplements, you know, and I came out of my degree thinking I knew everything there was to know about supplements. And you very quickly learn that you just know nothing. You know, like 1% of the supplement industry. So this is why I really feel passionate about practitioners learning more about their supplements, and also learning to recognize why certain nutrients might not be in the product. So I'll be like, well, this is a great product, but it's got no magnesium in it. And now I know why. It's because they physically couldn't fit that magnesium in the product. So you can look at this book for sale on Amazon, or of course you can look on the MHRA website. And the other big one is the EFSA, European Food Standards Agency, I think it is. They're the main websites to look at for all the legislation around supplements. And if it is something that you're going to go into, you just have to revisit this constantly, because it is changing so quickly. It's really hard to keep up to date with it all. And although it is supposedly EU legislation, every country kind of interprets this legislation in slightly different ways. So yeah, it's complicated. The legislation is complicated, but it's there.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Shona. That's very well answered. Okay, so I've got another question here that says, if companies don't have to disclose the ingredients with natural flavorings, how can you find out what's in them? And how do you find out if a supplement is truly natural? So I would say for that question, look for something that says like a raspberry concentrate or an orange concentrate or a lemon concentrate, because that will literally be that product concentrated. So I would avoid anything that says flavor, so natural flavor or just flavor or vanilla flavor, for example. So even when baking, you want to look for natural vanilla pods or the natural vanilla extract rather than vanilla flavor. So the same thing applies to food supplements and food. So just there's no way of finding out if it's a flavor. There's no way of finding out unless you go back to the manufacturer, and they're not at liberty to disclose to you, and they will not disclose to you. I know that for a fact. So just stay away from anything that says flavor or flavoring, unless it clearly states that it's the flavors coming from a concentrated extract. That is your safe bet. Okay, so another question here. So regarding capsule sizes. So why are some of the capsules so large they're almost impossible to swallow if the active ingredient makes up such a small proportion? Okay, so I think what you're referring to earlier on, Shona mentioned that, for example, vitamin D is in the micrograms, or vitamin B12 is in the micrograms. You have to add a filler or a binder. So there's a varying degree of capsule sizes. So they go from really big to really small. And, even if you're having vitamin D, like 1,000 international units, which is 25 micrograms, that's still a very tiny amount, even for the smallest capsule. So in that case, then you would definitely need to add a filler or a binder. But in some other supplements where you've got, say, magnesium capsule, actually magnesium is a really large molecule. And suppose as you wanted 350 milligrams of magnesium, that's elemental magnesium, you'd probably have to add 700 or 800 milligrams of the compound of whatever it is, magnesium glycinate or magnesium taurate or whatever. So in that case, then it becomes really bulky. So that's why there's a differences in the size, and some capsules are really, really big. And also when you look at supplements, sometimes it doesn't have the magnesium or the calcium or the potassium that you want it to have. And that's simply because it doesn't fit in there. So it depends on the nutrient. So don't forget that when we're looking at nutrients, we're looking at milligrams and we're looking at micrograms, in some cases even grams. So it's just to do with the size of the nutrient that's in there. Okay, so that comes to the end of our questions. If you do have any questions that you didn't feel comfortable to ask on this platform, please do feel free to email me. My email address is on the screen, so it's ella@drvegan.com. Do drop me an email. And again, thank you everyone so much for attending. And before you go, there's just one more thing that I want to mention, and that is that we have a brand new practitioner website. So that's professionals.drvegan. So go and have a look on there and see what you can find. There's loads of practitioner papers that go in depth about all of the ingredients and clinical applications. We've got handouts on there that you can just print off and give to your clients or email over to them. We're really trying to make being a practitioner as easy as possible and give you all the tools at your fingertips that you need and to help your clinic be more efficient. So here's another reminder as well. We will be sending out recordings of this webinar. And for those of you that did attend today, you can choose a free product from the website. So details of that will be in the email afterwards. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching it on demand, that won't be available to you. It's just for the people that are watching live today. And our supplements can be purchased from the Natural Dispensary as well as directly through us. And they're in quite a lot of stores as well. So again, please do go onto the professionals website and please do sign up to the practitioner scheme. You can get so many benefits from it. That's really going to help you and your clients. You can get discount codes for your clients. You can earn commission. You get free products. And sign up to our newsletter as well. You can get clinical news, all the latest research straight to your email box, and monthly free products. So what's not to like on that? Okay, so thank you very much, Shona, for being with us today. It was really good to hear from you, and you know, it's such an honor to hear from such an expert. So thank you, and everyone else, enjoy your evening, and hopefully we'll see you next month for our next webinar.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.